Facebook has this new requirement that it basically requires me to type a description for a video. So it took me a second to do that. But we are now live on Facebook. I wanted to welcome everybody to tonight's program. The two of us here are here to introduce and start the program for you. My name is John Haber. I'm the Field Services Director for the California Preservation Foundation. And
I
joining me
am
today,
Christine Madrid French, and I am the Director of Marketing and Development for CPF, and welcome everybody.
and we should all give Christine a big word of thanks tonight. She's staying up until 10:30 to join me today. So joining these holidays. And also, I just wanted to go over a few basic things before we start tonight's program. We want you to have a great time tonight. We also want you to be actively engaged. We have some time for questions if you'd like to ask the panelists any questions. We also have some time for drinks. So halfway through the program, we'll be talking about the cocktails we've prepared for you tonight. And finally, we want to be sure that you have the best experience possible. So if you have any questions, all you have to do is raise your hand. You can click on the raise hand button, or you can type in the chat box and let us know if you have a question, and we'll present that to the speakers. You can do that at any time. It doesn't matter when. You can do it at the beginning of the program if you want, and we'll keep an eye for those questions, and we'll have time for that. Also, tonight is our annual Awesome Auction. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, Chris?
I sure do, John. Thank you. I want to make sure too, why don't we practice using the chat window? You know, here at CPF, we love to hear everybody who's in the audience. That's the real beauty of catching us live. So if you want to post in the chat window where you're calling in from, we encourage people to chat and communicate during the entire program. And if you find that chat window is bothering your experience, you can minimize it or pull it off to the side. I see some Palm Springs and Oakland, and so where I saw Nelson up in there, and Lake Arrowhead. So we got some Lake Arrowhead people. And in case you're catching this recording on Facebook, you can always comment on the video on Facebook later on. So we are having our awesome auction right now, and we have a lot of fun things that you can pick from. I am actually offering my genealogical research services as one of the items, and John has offered to take people mushroom hunting. So you don't want to miss out.
I promise they won't be deadly mushrooms. They'll be edible, perfectly safe. I promise you that.
He's a professional in many areas.
Exactly. And we'll be featuring some of these items later tonight, but just to kind of give you a taste of what's in there, we also have some items related to tonight's program that I think we should tell you about. One is a set of 4 tickets to Santa's Village in Sky Forest. So be sure to take a look at that. It's a highly sought after. People are already bidding off on it. And then another one that will be featured briefly with our interview with Adrian is a book by Alan Hess on Googie. So, and it's signed, and Chris, you also get time with Alan Hess in a private Zoom
Yeah, I
session.
mean, this is like a once in a occasion opportunity where Alan Hess will Zoom with you personally to talk about his work. And also we have Annalisa Capurro from Sydney, Australia. Will do the same, where you get a personal opportunity to Zoom and ask questions of some of these professionals. So we wanted to make the auction more about experiences and enjoying other people. And so that's what we hope you can find when you go there. And also the Futuro is up again. So the Futuro was buy it now and taken, and Wayne Donaldson has very generously offered to offer a second visit for some lucky person who wants to bid on that. So yes, it's all at what is it, californiapreservation.org/auction. Is that right, John?
That's correct.
You want to put that in the chat window?
We'll do that. Yeah. So while we're moving into that, did you want to jump us into our first segment today, Chris?
I do, definitely. So Adrian, if you want to go ahead and turn on your video, I wanted to welcome first, well, just to give everyone the sense of what's going to happen today. First, we're going to have a good friend of mine and a preservationist from the way back, Adrian Biondo, is going to join us to give us some context. Then we'll have Nicholas and John talk about their experiences moving a Santa's Village. And then we'll have a little break. Bill and Michelle Johnson will come on later and talk about Sky Park at Santa's Village. And then we will have a Q&A at the end. So it's going to be great fun. And we're going to stay right on time because we know people are very busy during the holidays. So Adrian, let me start with you. I have another screen I need to share. And John, I'm just going to stop your video for a minute. Or let me see, John, you can do that. Let me find my other screen. One would have thought would have had that more ready at this point. Let's see. So,
So Adrian, while we're
Adrian, why don't
pulling,
you just tell us, oh, I was going to say, Adrian, why don't you just tell us about yourself a little bit? What's some of your experience?
Oh, well, I've worked in preservation with the Los Angeles Conservancy for many years. I was the chair of the Modern Committee for a very, very long time, maybe almost a decade, and always keeping projects on our radar screen and trying to make sure that we've got Los Angeles covered as much as we possibly can. I also wrote a book with John Ng called SoCal Eats, and then we were invited to do a sequel. So there's 2 books like that. And we also have SoCal Out and About, another book that we wrote. And oh, I see you've got your first slide up too.
I got this up, and you're getting all kinds of fun friends. Celeste Hong is saying hi, Adrian. So some of your friends from around California are in the chat. So Adrian, what I wanted to do was just maybe have a real like a casual talk with you, just about what is mostly the importance of roadside architecture in that context of California history, and how important it really is to be someone like yourself who is like, we'll talk about Gugu Patrol in a little bit, but somebody like yourself who's really keeping track of some of these things. So tonight's program is about Santa, but I wanted to show other projects. You know, Los Angeles and California are known a lot for this thematic architecture. Adrian provided these slides to us at Crossroads of the World. Isn't this for sale right now, Adrian, or was it just purchased? It was just sold?
I think it was just sold, but actually it's in the crosshairs right now because even though it is a National Register landmark, and I believe it's on the California Register too, 3 major high rises will be built shortly, and Los Angeles has given approval to those. So the view corridor may change, although the crossroads will be saved.
It's a great place. You could still kind of walk around a little bit over there. How about the Brown Derby? That was one that was saved, but maybe not the way we would want it. It's now on top of a shopping center. Isn't that right?
Right. And that's what's amazing. A lot of people feel that it was demolished, but there were 2. This is the expanded one was saved in 1980, and the community actually came out to fight for that one. And then it was relocated to the upper floor of the shopping center that's called Brown Derby Plaza. And it's really very close to where it was originally when it was across from the Ambassador Hotel in the Coconut Grove. So hopefully someday we'll see it come back down onto Wilshire Boulevard and be celebrated as a Brown Derby again.
I know, and I never got to go. The other thing I want to make everybody understand is, like, if you have a chance to go somewhere, you should go right away. Because you never know, so many times. And so, of course, people are familiar with the tamale, the famous tamale. Is that still there, Adrian?
The tamale is still there. It's sandwiched between 2 buildings, but if you walk up to it, you can see the old cement and the exposed chicken wire from when it was built in the 30s. And it was operating as Charlie's Beauty Salon for the longest time. And then before that, a law office. But that's definitely on our radar because that's a really rare, example of roadside vernacular programmatic architecture. There's only one tamale.
Very rare. Isn't that also called mimetic architecture when you have a building that's imitating something else? I think maybe someone could post it.
Right, like the oranges that were built to serve orange juice or sell oranges. It's like mimetic, like mimicking.
Right.
Its use, right?
Yeah,
Here
so
I
definitely wanted to get into this, Adrian. So I'm going to just run through the slides because we have about 10 minutes. But I wanted you just maybe to give a sense of what happened with this situation.
This was actually my baby, the Johnny's broiler in Downey. That was originally Harvey's broiler. That photo shows me that's my car, my Oldsmobile 88, and we're with the community there, the Friends of Johnny's and the Los Angeles Conservancy Modern Committee. We actually partnered up to try to save that building, and we had rallies, we had garage sales. The Friends of Johnny's and I put together a concert featuring the Blasters. We did everything to fund a nomination to save that building when it closed in 2001. And got the nomination funded, and it went on to the California Register, even though it was opposed by the owner. And then it was turned into a used car dealership, and we kept watching it over the years. And one day, bulldozers appeared at the back of the property. That was January 7th of 2007. And it looked like a bomb went off when I got there. It was that bad. And so we worked with the city of Downey and to keep a moratorium in place so that they couldn't pull any building permits and level the rest of it.
That was
And
illegal
thanks to-
demolition, wasn't it?
It was totally illegal demolition, and the tenant pleaded no contest. He was filed with 3 misdemeanor charges, very much a slap on the hand. But luckily, we found Jim Louder, a franchise operator for Bob's Big Boy, and using redevelopment monies and some historic tax credits, we were able to put the building back together. And also Peter Marusi, my colleague who wrote the nomination for Johnny's, he had scanned the blueprints. So we were able to access the blueprints and refer to them and come up with this beautiful project that's still going strong.
That was really a miracle.
Actually-
I remember when it was demolished, it was so heartbreaking to see that. And they didn't have any permits for demolition or anything, right? Wasn't it sort of an overnight kind of thing, sneaky thing?
It was it started around Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And of course, they would pick a Sunday when code enforcement is closed and so on.
Right.
But I got a call from my lead person, Annalisa Ridenauer, and she called to tell me that they were demolishing Johnny's. And I was heading out to Encino with friends, and we turned around. They drove me out to Downey like an ambulance driver. And on the way, I texted everyone I could think of, ABC, NBC, all the news channels, all the police, fire. And when we got there, CBS actually broke the story on the breaking news and kept it running for 3 days. It was that much of a crime. It just looked like rubble.
And this is the rebuilt version here, right?
That's the rebuilt version. And we've had lots of interest from movies. Johnny's was always in the movies going way back. It's in the movie Heat. And
this
I
guy.
can give you 10 pages. And there you are, Don Draper from Mad Men. That's the really great episode.
Our favorite Mad Men showed up there. And when we can all go back again, we're going to end up over there and have some milkshakes like John was mentioning.
Yes, have some milkshake.
And we have
And
just a couple
here's-
more. So yeah, what is this now?
This is a current issue we have. It's the Chili Bowl on West Pico Boulevard in West LA. And there's only 5 of these Chili Bowl programmatic restaurants left. And this is the only one that is, it's extremely intact. And when the nomination was filed, the new owners filed a demolition permit. So the nomination actually, having a nomination pending prevents them from demolishing it. But it's on hold right now. It's been continued to February. So we hope that the nomination will go through and that we'll have a happy ending to this one.
And this
It's
is
a really
in Los
beautiful
Angeles?
building.
That's
Yeah,
in LA?
West Los Angeles. Mhm.
And then this one was just restored, I think?
Yes,
the
this was
Idler?
restored. Yes, and thanks to excellent stewardship by Bobby Green and his 1933 group, and wonderful preservation work by my colleague Chris Nichols, who wrote the nomination for the Idle Hour. It's in NoHo, which is like a art district now, and other than the pandemic, it's doing really well. And they take great care of it, and they actually moved the Bulldog Cafe replica from the Peterson Museum to their back garden area. So if you ever have a chance to visit, go out to the patio and you'll see him there.
I think I have a
And I
picture of
think
him later.
this-
Well, this one looks
This
so
is-
familiar too, this La Caña.
That's Idle Hour before it was restored.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was in
That's
terrible
incredible.
condition. It is incredible. That's another miracle.
So we got just a
tail-
couple more. Mhm.
Bobby Green and the 1933 group are working on the Tail of the Pup right now. You can follow on Instagram at Tail O the Pup, because they'll have some good news coming 2021. They're taking care of that, restoring it, and then it will be relocated. We're keeping our fingers crossed. There it is, so iconic, the Tail of the Pup.
And it was moved apparently?
It was moved, it was on San Vicente, and then it was put into storage for quite a while. And then it was acquired by the Valley Relics Museum. I'm a board member with Valley Relics. And Tommy Gelinas, who's the executive director there, decided to will it to Bobby Green and the 1933 group so that they could reopen it as an actual eatery again. So that's the plan.
That's wonderful. It seems like that's going to be one of the themes of what we're talking about tonight is moving these things to save them.
And there's the original Bulldog Cafe from the 20s. And the one that's the replica at the Idle Hour is a smaller version of that. And there's Bobby Green in the center when it was being dismantled for relocation to North Hollywood.
This is
It's
incredible.
really sweet. You can walk inside. It's very, very cute.
Mm-hmm. I think I have one more. And this is a current issue here, Save Alpine Village.
That's a current issue, and I'm proud of that issue because that's a later 1968 to 74 programmatic themed environment, and it's Bavarian style. And it's in Torrance, but actually in an unincorporated portion of Los Angeles County. And it's the first legacy building to be landmarked by Los Angeles County. So it just went through last year, and we're really proud of it.
That's great. So I'm
You
just going
can
to stop
follow
my share because I just want to
Sure,
ask you a
sure.
couple questions. So do you think that having these buildings having a nomination is what you're saying, that having the nomination can stop or pause the demolition? So do you find that to be a really important strategy?
I think it's one of the most important strategies because then you have legal protections in place that you can buy some time with.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
I
then
think
tell me
also-
about, yeah, go ahead.
I think the grassroots coalitions really are important because it's so vital to have the local support. And also it gives people an access to a project, and you can mentor them and get them involved in a way that doesn't intimidate them. And I often work with the neighborhood groups, and that's what I find, that they like that connection. And say in the case of Johnny's Broiler, the Friends of Johnny's actually are the regulars that keep it going. You know, they organize car shows, and so you have a built-in group once you reopen. And I think that that's a wonderful thing to have, a grassroots organization. And so we had Friends of Alpine Village, that was very active, Friends of Johnny's. Maybe there'll be a Friends of the Chili Bowl next, who knows?
Oh, right. I forgot I had a picture too of the other diner that you were going to talk about. The one that's endangered right now as well.
Corky's.
Corky's, right.
Corky's, even though it's not programmatic, it's a great Googie coffee shop that's in Van Nuys, or Sherman Oaks rather. And Alan Hess just last week got the nomination through that he wrote. And so it's officially designated as a historic cultural monument in the city of LA. And so it now has protections, and he'll be making some announcements soon. It has a new operator that will be coming in. And so that's a win right there. But one of the preservation challenges that's very big for projects is when they become vacant, they're instantly vandalized. So I go out on what I call Googie Patrol and check on all our projects that we have on our radar. And I'll take pictures and send them to, say, Alan, say, you know, look, the property's been terribly vandalized, and he'll be in touch with the owners or whoever is the consultant working on various projects. But that's a danger. Covina Bowl, which is another issue that is still running right now. We've had a lot of vandalism there. People actually got into the attic and removed wiring. So yeah, it's hard for preservation issues. You know, they really need to be babysat in so many different ways. So anyone who wants to volunteer to help us, we always welcome.
Oh, that's great. I love the Googie Patrol. So if you want to follow Adrienne on Facebook, she'll post images and video of all the fun places that she's seen. So, and Adrienne, you'll be coming back on with us at the Q&A, right? So if anyone has any questions for Adrienne and her Googie Patrol, you can post the questions in the Q&A, and Adrienne will be back at the end about 7:15 to answer more questions.
Thank you.
So thanks, Adrienne. We'll see you in a little bit, and we're going to move on. We're going to move on to Nicholas and John to get some ideas about what is going on your site. Okay, take it away, Nicholas.
Good evening, everybody. Just to give you a bit of context to who I am and why I'm here. My name is Nicholas Lasquich, and I am the National Video Promotions Coordinator, which is a fancy phrase for video producer, essentially, for the American Coaster Enthusiasts. And ACE is a nonprofit charitable organization, and we focus on, the preservation, education, and enjoyment of roller coasters all around the world. From 2013 to 2015, I produced a documentary series called The Lost Parks of Northern California. And we produced 6 episodes, one of which was on Santa's Village in Scotts Valley. And my background, other than video producing, is I'm a mechanical engineer. I work in the themed entertainment theme park industry, and it's an industry I've wanted to work in since I was a kid. But I also have this passion for the history of the industry, and that tied into producing this video series. I will jump right into the presentation here then. All right, so 25-minute crash course on the history of Santa's Village in Scotts Valley. Let's go. So any big project takes a visionary. And in this case, the visionary was Harold Glenn Holland, who was the father of Santa's Village. And in 1953, he was 35 years old, and he was reading a Saturday Evening Post article about a similar project called North Pole in New York. And similarly, or in addition to that, Holland grew up during the Great Depression, and his parents died by the time he was only 18 years old, and leaving him to care for his younger sister all his own. And so these things together combined, and Holland dreamed about giving his children and other children the type of Christmas that he never really got to have growing up because his parents had passed away at such a young age. And really, according to his daughter, he wanted Christmas to just be magical. And so it started in 1955 with the Southern California Lake Arrowhead Sky Forest location. And coming up in a little bit, you'll hear more about the development of that and how that's still surviving. But it opened 6 weeks before Disneyland, which is kind of a major thing to think about when you think about theme parks and you think of Disneyland as the pinnacle. The fact that this opened and had such a highly themed environment before Disneyland opened, it was kind of a big deal. So it was very successful. And it turned out that Glenn Holland was good friends with Ray Kroc, who you see pictured here, and was also good friends with Dick and Mac McDonald. And McDonald brothers told Glenn about the story about they had their business idea that they shared with Ray Kroc to sort of franchise, come up with a chain of fast food amusement parks. And because of this connection and friendship, that inspired Glenn to expand his holiday empire and franchise Santa's Village. And so we started looking around in other places in California and thought about, what Northern California would be a great place. And so we landed on just north of Santa Cruz, California in Scotts Valley. And in 1957, 2 years later, Santa's Village opened Memorial Day weekend and officially became the first franchise theme park chain in the world. And so to give you a bit of the history of the park and the rundown of what's going on, I'm essentially going to go through a tour of the park as if you were a guest going there today, starting with the entrance, heading through the parking lot, going into the park, and just talking about all the different things you could do there. So of course, when you came up and you drove up along the road, you came up to these great, big, beautiful signs and this really awesome themed, Standard Oil themed gas station that was right next to the parking lot, which is in the bottom right photo. And you can see they had reindeer on the top and a sleigh coming out of the roof. Again, really pioneering for the time to think about a highly themed environment like this. So you enter the park and you get a beautiful park map. And as you can see, there is a lot to take in and there's a lot to do at this park. I'm going to basically give you a rundown of a lot of these different items you see here all throughout this presentation. There's a whole rides area on the right here. Mrs. Claus's Kitchen, the Mill Wheel Toy Factory, an actual sleigh ride. Lots of different animal exhibits. Of course, Santa's home right here in the middle, and a variety of other attractions, which you'll see in a few seconds here. I'll note 2 years later in 1959, Glenn continued his success with a third Santa's Village location, which you can see on the far right here, over in Dundee, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. You'll find out that location actually contributed substantially to the demise of this franchise and the later bankruptcy and selling of the chain. But we'll get to that in a little bit. You enter the park and you kind of come to the hub, if you will. Think of Disneyland as the hub where it takes you to all the main lands. I think of this as the hub of Santa's Village, where you have Santa's home as sort of the main centerpiece of the park. You can see the North Pole down here, a Jack in the Box figure, which if you're thinking about is not Christmas themed. Santa's Village was also home to a variety of Fairyland figures. And so that was another really unique piece of the village. The architecture was something that was really special and really cool to Santa's Village. And you'll see in the later part of this presentation about the Southern California Santa's Village is that this architecture was consistent among the Santa's Village locations. So as we go through these photos, you'll be able to see some of these iconic buildings time and time again that still exist today. And the Good Witch's Bakery was a really great place for visitors because it had these really giant gingerbread cookies. If you talk to people that went to this park growing up, they talk about how good they were, and you go on Facebook and people are trying to like, do you know what the recipe is when, you know, from 40 years ago? It's this really iconic thing that people just love to talk about. Candy Cane Sleigh Ride was really unique because, as you can see here, it actually had reindeer that were brought in from Alaska to pull an actual sleigh on a tracked ride. A really, really unique immersive experience, again, at a time when the most immersive experience you would have would be at a carnival. So it was a really, really special sort of experience. You can see on the upper right that there was even an icy tunnel that you went through. A really unique sort of opportunity for guests, and especially kids. Very whimsical. Whimsy is a big theme you'll notice here. Christmas Tree Ride, another really heavily themed ride in a time when there wasn't anything themed. Essentially, you're riding in Christmas ornaments circling around a tree, and as a kid you get to pull the little lever. Think of it like Dumbo, the flying elephant at Disneyland. A very cool interactive ride, and you feel like you're part of the experience. It's not just a passive thing. The bobsled ride, another instance where at another theme park you might see a roller coaster like this, and you just see steel supports and no meaning and purpose to anything. And, you know, like I said earlier, Glenn Holland's daughter said that he wanted Christmas to be just magical. And that went, you know, he was so stringent on the theming that went through the park. And so took a standard roller coaster and heavily themed it by hiding all the support structure, building over the station. A really, really unique ride. You can see on the first and second car, there's the Easter Bunny is here. And then this strange pumpkin looking character, which we'll get to in just a moment. Another attraction was the pony cart ride. Again, not a real pony in this case, but a fun little ride for kids to go around and feel like they're riding a horse around through lots of little castle-like structures and whimsical theming. Another really cute ride. This gives you a sense of the vibe and the feel of Santa's Village in Scotts Valley. It was really built into the forest. It was built on a 25-acre plot of land that was originally a dairy farm. And they took down as few trees as possible because the tree line of Santa's Village in Scotts Valley was really a big focal point of how it felt so magical. In fact, the tree line today is pretty much intact, and it's how you're able to figure out where a lot of these structures were. This was one of my favorite parts of the park because it was down below the main grade up here along a creek, and you can see all the trees, and you can just imagine how peaceful it would be down here. This was a toy factory, toy shop, and these gears actually spun. Another piece of detail that Glenn Holland took the time to do. A train ride. What park doesn't have a train ride? Disneyland has one, so does Santa's Village. And I can't not mention this pumpkin guy now because he's standing here mocking all of us. And so, like I mentioned, there was a fairy tale aspect to Santa's Village. And this was Mr. Pumpkinhead. What a creative name, right? I'm not sure exactly how he tied into the park other than it might have been as another sort of representation of a holiday instead of Santa being related to Christmas. They might have had more Halloween stuff during the year. And speaking of Mr. Pumpkinhead, as part of the Lost Parks of Northern California documentary that I mentioned earlier, we're going to show a brief segment of a park guest telling a really fun story about what happens when you get dizzy with Mr. Pumpkinhead.
Oh, great. Let me pull this up very quickly here.
And if the park was really quiet or we had hardly any visitors, then the employees could ride the rides for free. And so one of the guys who worked there dressed up like a scarecrow with a big pumpkin head, and he was called Mr. Pumpkinhead. So he and I got into the snowball ride to take it for a spin. And it was one of those rides where it has a wheel in the middle that you could turn the wheel and spin the cup really fast. So we both got on the wheel and we were spinning it really, really fast. Suddenly I heard him screaming and yelling at the ride operator to stop the ride. And it turns out he was getting nauseous. So the ride operator stopped the ride and he got out and he had to run to the nearest restroom, which was probably 150 feet away easily, because we were on one end of the park. And he managed, I mean, in this big shoes and scarecrow outfit, he managed to get to the men's room and got that big fiberglass head off before he threw up. And I'm really glad that he did, because if he had thrown up in that pumpkin head, I don't think employees would have been allowed to ride the rides anymore after that.
So that gives you, let me go back to this, a sense of the fun and whimsy that employees had working at a place like Santa's Village. So I mentioned the North Pole earlier. This was a really cool thing because it wasn't just some fiberglass or steel structure. It was actually cold and frozen, and they had a refrigeration system. You can see on the left this sort of steel plate that sort of masked that from the park guests. This was a thing that kids loved to touch and hug and, of course, lick. There's a lot of really great footage from the 50s and 60s of kids getting their tongues stuck classically to the North Pole. But I love this detail because they did not have to go the extra mile to do this, but knowing Glen Holland and going into the research of this place, it doesn't surprise me. On the right, you can see that they had this sort of domed structure that it was sitting on. This was actually supposed to be a little slice of the earth, literally representing where the North Pole would be. Another really great little piece of detail to think about. Behind it here is Santa's home with this big sort of clock you can see right between these two. On the left, you can see it here with the months until, counting down to Christmas. Mushrooms, a really whimsical part of Santa's Village that has lived on beyond the park. It's amazing because people talk about Santa's Village and they talk about these mushrooms the most. You can see by just how they look, especially in this later photograph, just how whimsical and colorful they were. And in fact, many of them still exist today out in the greater Bay Area, in San Jose and Scotts Valley, in a variety of homes. When the park closed, people bought them at an auction, or later when the park was in an abandoned state, they would go mushroom hunting in the woods, but not for real ones, but for fiberglass mushrooms. And so they really have had a life of their own beyond the village. And it's a really cool, unique aspect to all the Santa's Village parks. They all had these whimsical mushrooms. Another attraction was the spinning snowball ride. This was built by a Bay Area-based ride manufacturer called Arrow Development. Arrow is famously known for building the Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland, as well as the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. And they were based out of Mountain View, California, for about 30 years. And so this was one of their attractions, of course, themed after snowballs. There were two of these built. One was built at Scotts Valley, and another one was built at the Chicago location. And there's a connection between this ride and that Chicago location, as you'll see coming up. To give some perspective, by 1961, again, this would have been 2 years after the third park had opened, the total assets of the Santa's Village Corporation were $17.4 million in today's money, or $2 million at the time. So you can see that they were doing fairly well. 4 years after Scotts Valley opened and 6 years after the Southern California location opened. But things don't always last in their heyday forever. And so by 1966, Holland Corporation had to sell Santa's Village. And he was getting cash strapped because the Chicago-based location couldn't open in the winter. Of course, a park called Santa's Village would have its peak season during Christmas time. And that miscalculation by Glenn and his developers and investors, it really put a huge financial burden on the park. And so from going from doing fairly successful in the early 60s to 5 years later, basically having to call it quits and sell the parks. So in 1966, it was purchased by a Santa Clara real estate redeveloper who basically decided that he wants to try to keep it going. And for about a decade, things were going well until about 1977, when Santa's Village Corporation declared bankruptcy, and he bought Santa's Village, Scotts Valley outright for only $615,000. Obviously a really cheap deal there. His plan to save the park was to actually develop sort of a more attractive theme park a la Knott's Berry Farm. There was going to be a shopping center, a hotel, and rides, and he was actually serious in continuing this amusement theme. Unfortunately, what happened was Scotts Valley, the city, didn't like his proposal. And so his last-ditch effort in 1978 was to kind of turn the park into an arts and crafts fair. And at this point, the theming had fallen into disrepair, and it was really a sign of the times. You know, it wasn't popular anymore. And so at the end of 1978, around Christmas, there were some pretty torrential rains that did some substantial damage to the park. And that was kind of the final death knell for the park. And so speaking of the sadness that wept over the guests of the park, we have another video clip from the Lost Parks documentary to sort of illustrate the sadness of people who went to this park. John, play the next clip.
Oh, disappointed, and that I would never be able to bring my children to Santa's Village. That there, the small parks like Santa's Village were sort of disappearing, and it was part of my childhood and something I wouldn't be able to share with future generations.
The end of an era, as far as the park closing, it closed long after I'd outgrown it, and I hadn't been there in years. And it kind of felt like a sign of the times, because it was definitely a park that was evocative of a more innocent time.
It just felt like this magical era was coming to an end. And you entered into a whole different world when you were there. In the trees, the incredible redwood trees, and walking through the woods to go to work, and the sound of the train, the whistle. What is going to happen to that incredible place, that magical place that had so many memories for so many people?
All right, so that really, again, shows you how much people cared about this park, especially the people that worked there. Unfortunately, it fell into disrepair pretty badly after the park closed, as you can imagine. A lot of the things were auctioned off, but not immediately. And this is actually over a decade after the park closed. This is in 1990. And this is that Goodwich Bakery I showed you earlier with that really great pink roof and the gingerbread cookies. And it's just really sad to see that it turned out to be like this. This is another part of the Fantasyland area, the Fairyland area, that had a mirror maze, an Alice in Wonderland themed mirror maze. And again, just complete disrepair, falling apart. This was Mrs. Claus's kitchen. This was another sort of place where you could get lots of different eats and treats. Santa's home, which I showed earlier, the North Pole would have been off to the right, over here, kind of under all this ivy. Here's that iconic sort of clock you can see. But not everything ends in a sad story, even though it looks as derelict as it does here. And so what survives today? We're going to jump straight into this. And the spinning snowball ride lives on, which is really awesome. In the 90s, it was actually at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, as you can see on the upper left, when it operated as a pool table themed ride. And then it went into storage for many years, until about 2015, when the Santa's Village in Dundee, Illinois, which is now called the Santa's Village Amusement Park. There's a whole animal aspect to it. And that was after the original park had closed in 2006 and had its own bankruptcy and closure. And in 2011, that park reopened. But in 2015, they bought the spinning snowball ride that was at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk at the time and brought it to Santa's Village in Chicago. So it's really awesome to think that a ride that originated at Santa's Village in Scotts Valley lives on today at one of the actual original Santa's Village parks in Chicago. And so there's another really awesome aspect of Santa's Village that this next video and final video clip is going to show you about how the village lives on in Hope Valley. And I would guess John, do you want to talk a little bit about what this resort is exactly, and why these cabins have been are living on?
Well, I think I'm just on audio at the moment, so I'll carry on. Yeah, the Sorensen's Resort was created back in the early 1900s, and it's a sort of an eclectic group of cabins that came to be over time. And one cabin came from Norway, for example, and many of the cabins were built from scratch there right on the site. So in the early 90s, as Nicholas was pointing out, we were told of these cabins in Scotts Valley by a professor at UC Santa Cruz, Melanie Mayer, who turned us on to 3 of the cabins with the agreement that we'd have to take them down to the ground. So we engaged our brother-in-law, Nick, who we eventually called Saint Nick for his glorious and magical way of dealing with these cabins. We nailed little aluminum tags to each log and took the buildings apart and shipped them up on flatbeds, arriving 6 trucks or 12 flatbeds and 3 cabins, which we had to redesign 2 of them. The third one was what was the toy workshop, which we never did get to because of time, money, and inspiration. Nevertheless, St. Nick's and Chapel live on, although reconfigured for guest quarters and guest enjoyment. But they are quite whimsical, as Nicholas was saying, and lovely to stay in. So with that, I would say that the clip that they shot for this Great Amusement Park series would be good to fill in at this point.
But if you're looking for the authentic Santa's Village experience, just come up here off of Highway 88 to Sorensen's All-Season Resort. That's where you'll find 2 of the original buildings from Santa's Village transplanted here and converted into cabins that you can stay overnight. That's pretty awesome. So these are the last remnants of Santa's Village up here at Sorensen's that, well, they just weren't good enough to go into the restored cabins when they were relocated up here. It's kind of awesome to be really holding a piece of history, to be quite honest with you. Wow.
Well, I'm the innkeeper. Involves everything from maintenance issues to serving meals to taking phone reservations and explaining the history of certain things. We wandered through here on our honeymoon 33 years ago to find this dilapidated group of cabins. It's been a pretty special ride for those 33 years. Well, we were inspired by a professor emeritus from UC Santa Cruz, Melanie Mayer, who had already secured one of the cabins. And she told us that there were several available and that Borland, who owned the property at that time, had no home for those cabins. There were no nonprofits interested in securing those. So we went down and took a look at them and thought they would probably fit into this eclectic collection. Well, they're most intact. Santa's home at Santa's Village was the most obvious with the most charm. So that was one we selected. And then what was called Sheepherder's Chapel was a smaller cabin there and also fairly well intact, albeit they had suffered 15 years of vandalism and, you know, a variety of words not to be spoken here sprayed across them. And then the Elves Workshop, which we still have yet to construct. So the only connection is that it seemed to be a charming thing to do, and we're into historic preservation. We've been members of the National Historic Preservation out of Washington, D.C. for probably 30 years. So, well, as you may recall, I said earlier, we've been involved in community organizing in Santa Cruz from the middle 70s, where we had an opportunity to create the Land Trust of Santa Cruz and eventually the Community Foundation. And so our sense of community goes beyond our skin.
Have any of the former employees or the elves from Santa's Village actually come through here just because the cabins were here?
Quite a few, and actually one of them was an employee of ours.
Really?
Who repainted and restructured the mushroom. She was an elf back in the days, although she was an elf at the Los Angeles version of Santa's Village. So she still comes. She's bringing her wreath making class in a couple of weeks. So she's an elf of, we won't say how many rings around her tree, but she was there in the 50s. But no, we've had quite a few. I would say upwards of the thousands.
Nice things happen when you believe. You believe when you see Santa's Village. Come on, follow me through the trees. Santa's Village. La 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 la. La 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 la. Come on with me through the trees. Come on with me and you'll believe. Santa's Village. I believe.
I believe.
Santa's Village.
All right. We ran a little bit long there, but I just want to thank you. I hope you enjoyed that little history of Santa's Village in Scotts Valley. It was been a really great opportunity to relive the history of it again. And I just want to share a really quick image from the final slide here of the presentation before we toggle over. Here was me with John Brazended, the former innkeeper of Sorenson's, along with Chris Roberry, who's the host of the series that you just saw. It was a real labor of love to produce this, and John and I actually hadn't talked since we filmed this over 7 years ago, and so it was really amazing to be reconnected with him. And obviously, this community is a tight-knit family, so I hope you enjoyed that little history.
Thank you very much, Nick, and John as well. What a wonderful sort of window into the Scotts Valley site and the whole history of it. And I'm sure we'll have some questions for both of you about both the documentary and the process of moving those cabins and everything related to it, but we'll get to those during the Q&A. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into a little break for everybody. And since it's the holidays, it's going to be a drink break. So if you have those recipes on hand that we sent to you earlier, we encourage you to mix up your cocktail. And in the meantime, we're going to have Michelle and Bill and Chris Madrid French also join us today and talk a little bit about the drinks we have.
I finished my drink earlier.
To maybe highlight our backgrounds today. So Chris, what's behind you?
I'm in a Thomas Kincaid, very quiet, serene cabin in the snow. And how about you?
I have a Corbusier behind me in a Thomas Kincaid setting. So I guess very holiday themed, but also brutalist. So
I love it.
So we wanted to welcome you tonight, and also can you tell us a little bit about the drink that you've mixed up tonight?
Sure. We have a Santa Claus Napolitan, and I actually was able to find a kind of a cheat on this. Let me show you guys. I was shopping for white cranberry juice, and I found this Skinny Girl white cranberry juice Cosmo. So I feel like it's just so easy. Everything's already in there, and you can just mix it up with some ice, and then you can pour it over. I put a little cranberries and a twist of lemon in mine, which I think is on the recipe you guys got, but it's actually really good. It's not too strong, just perfect for warming you up during the winter. We've been drinking ours ever since this program started, and having a good old time.
Enjoying the show.
I
Cheers.
guess you'll be
Great,
ready.
and
Yeah, cheers,
because
everybody.
I'm a big fan.
Cheers
I
to
was going to say, because
Santa.
I'm a big fan of this is my only way of getting lit tonight. So,
Nice joke,
uh,
John.
but I also wanted to, yeah, I'm a fan of dad jokes. Sorry. But basically, I wanted to also sort of highlight some of the auction items, Chris, and maybe we could pull up the website and show people some of these. I'm really excited about some of these items. Like here, let me share my screen and pull up some items here.
Yeah, while you're pulling up the items, I wanted to mention that Bill and Michelle are have that recipe is featured at their Pedal Pub, which we're going to hear more about at Sky Park at Santa's Village, and that's one of the recipes at their bar. And I think some tickets are available, right, John, through the auction? I should mention that the auction is one of the ways that California Preservation Foundation is one of our fundraisers. And we do use that money to make sure that all of our programming, or as much programming as we can do, is actually free for the public. So a lot of people, so as many people as possible can join. And that's why I think we've been able to really bring people together with these programs. And that's why we encourage you to chat in the window so you can meet some people while you're here. I've actually made new friends in the chat. I'm sure you have too, right, John? Right, there we
Oh,
go.
I've been
4
too busy
tickets
for
to
that.
Sky Park.
So I also wanted to pull up some of these other items we were talking about today. Was we have a book on the gingerbread house that will feature one of our sessions next week. But of course, the item that we've been talking about is higher up on the page here. 4 tickets to Sky Park at Santa's Village. We currently have 2 bidders on that. So competition will be fierce. So we want people to bid on it. There is a buy it now price. There is no buy it now price now. So this could go through the roof if people want it to. So keep on bidding, and it's a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity to see the park. I think I might bid on it to encourage my mom to go out and visit with me sometime. Bill and Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the park right now? Due to COVID and everything, I'm not sure if things are changing over there. Looks like they may have lost their power again.
Oh, no. They've been having a little bit of blackouts. Bill and Michelle do run the Sky Park at Santa's Village, and they are calling in, and they did lose their power earlier. So we'll see if they can't pop back up. Do you want to go ahead and unshare your screen, John? And we'll just get everyone excited about their cocktails until they can come back on. Does anyone have any questions? I know we have a question here that we could ask Nicholas. Here's Bill and Michelle. There they are. We thought we might have lost you to power. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves, Bill and Michelle. We wanted to ask you a couple questions about if your site is actually open right now. We did see some action on Facebook wondering if you can visit right now.
Are open right now?
Are they freezing, John?
They are. Yeah,
Oh no, this is gonna make it hard.
They're having some power issues up there. I think we could do some questions. There were some questions that came in for Adrian and also for John and Nick. So until we get them back, we could address some of these questions. So the question for Adrian was about the Brown Derby. You know if the neon that was there was put into a museum or not, or what happened to that?
I actually don't know where. Well, actually, I'm not sure. The Wilshire one may be in private collection right now, but we do have a Brown Derby that's at the Museum of Neon Art in Glendale, and we periodically put it on display so people can see the full Derby hat there. And Eric Linksweiler and I, another historian, we acquired a coffee shop sign from the Vine Street Brown Derby that someone had taken down when they saw a sign crew removing the sign. So it's script in what do they call it? Novial gold in the original script font. So that one is also at the Museum of Neon Art if anyone wants to go visit it. You can look online at Museum of Neon Art and see pictures of it too.
Now, there was a question about the Santa's Village in Dundee, Illinois. I'm not sure if you ever touched on it, Nick or John, but the question was about why did that Santa's Village have to close in the winter?
So the biggest issue was the cold the cold winter conditions essentially that existed out in the Chicago area. Of course, it snows there. It gets much colder out there than it would out, say, in Northern California at the Scotts Valley location. And because of the sheer amount of snow and the cold weather, people just didn't want to go out, and they didn't want to they couldn't open the park. And so their peak season, which out at the California locations was during November, December, January, the park in Chicago, I think, closed late October. And so the whole Christmas peak season just totally was missed because of the winter weather. And that was, again, part of the demise of the whole thing eventually.
Great.
All right, John, looks like we got, do you want to do one more? Or do you want to go to Bill and Michelle while we have them on the line in case they run out of power again?
Yeah. I didn't know they were back on. Okay, if they're back on, we can jump into their session if we'd like now.
Great. You guys hear us okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm Bill and Michelle, and we are we're going to put you through just a little bit of kind of history of the park here, and we'll just kind of take it from the top here. Hopefully, our connection stays okay. So this is Santa's Village in 1955. This is opening day, Memorial Day, and as you can see, it was a big hit right off the bat. And hence Glenn Holland, struck gold in a sense when they first started this. It was before Disneyland, so there was a lot of hype for these new theme parks. And yeah, as you can see, that's the main parking lot. There's new parking lots that were expanded on because of the crowds, but this is the original parking lot, and this is the original opening day.
Bill, we need you to share your screen, I think, because we're not seeing the video, the PowerPoint.
Well, that would be problematic. Sorry, guys.
Just close it. Just close it.
Yeah, so let me escape out. Sorry, guys.
I'm going to put the link to your site in the chat.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Great. There you go. Now it's
There we
going.
go. Okay.
Now
Everybody
you
see
got it.
that?
Yep, you got it now.
So that's a replay of what I just said. So that's the opening day, 1955, and there's the parking lot that you can see on opening day.
So like we talked about before, the storybook theming was very popular in mid-century 50s. And so they had a lot of that incorporated into the theming of Santa's Village. And we were able to kind of do some archaeological hunting when we first acquired the property. We're both very much into history and preservation as well. We're from the local community, so we really we kept like as much of everything that we could find. So one of the things that we did find were we found some drawings, architectural drawings, and we didn't know who they were from. And we had done a podcast a few years ago, and we were told that one of the first woman Imagineers, Harriet Burns, was responsible for a lot of the drawings for the initial development of the Santa's Villages with Glenn Holland. And that was how they kind of developed the fanciful colors and all the different things. This is Cinderella's coach. It was pulled by live horses, mini ponies, actually. This is actually a slide of.
Yeah, this is the Rose Parade. So this is 1954, and there wasn't a way to stream out advertising. And so in 1954, Santa's Village and Glen Holland put together a float for the Rose Parade to market the park.
This is our Chapel of the Little Shepherd, and just a couple of things about the architecture. All of these buildings were built from the site. The roof systems were also built. You can see that they're what I call totem siding. I don't know if that's the technological term, but the steeple on top is still there today. But one of the things that was really popular was all the characters at the village, which you can see here as the Easter Bunny. And this was actually a special event that they did for some special needs children. And we were able to acquire some of these photographs through Art Historical Society in Lake Arrowhead. And they shared them with us, and we've used them for all kinds of different reasons.
Yeah, and you can see just different generations. The lower right-hand photo, that's from the 1950s, and then the upper left-hand one is from the 1960s. So we have a lot of period images in history of the park, which is kind of fun to share.
These are some slides. Like I said before, when we first acquired the property, it was a complete disaster, and you guys will see in a few minutes, but we had found some boxes of film, and we sent them out to get restored because we didn't actually know what they were, because they were all different kinds of film. Anything from like those big reels to like slides that they actually sold in the stores. And so this is one of those restored films that we found. This was a promotional photo shoot that they had done at one point with the North Pole. Obviously they had like a ton of live animals there. And then you can see some of the costuming. We were actually able to find some sketches of the original costumes and been able to restore those as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that's different that we did to the park that's kind of emulated here is you notice that there's the little baby goat. The zoo amusement park in Dundee, Illinois has stayed with the theme of being like a petting zoo animal type interactive park. Michelle and I chose not to go into animals. We did quite a bit of research on what the demise of the park was. And with the last owner, we did have the ability to interview the family or talk to the family. And some of it was the overhead of the animals. So our Sky Park at Santa's Village does not have the animal overlay that the old parks had.
This is the centerpiece of the park, which is Santa's house. I have a really amazing team of artisans that I work with that have helped me restore the park, as well as my brother. We both come from like film backgrounds, and our parents. And so we've been able to recreate some of these iconic pieces, including the clock, and you guys will see that later in our video. But you know, everything about this is just super fanciful, including the mushrooms. We've also been able to restore some of the mushrooms at our park. Some of these items were not there when we purchased the park, but we'll go into that a little bit later.
Yeah, this is a neat picture. This is Putty Hank. He's the original owner of the property of the land. This is taken in 1954 when they first started the building. All of our buildings are kind of magical in the sense that they're all built from the lumber on the property. So this is just a picture of them actually milling the property. I was told from the owner that Glenn Holland is actually the gentleman in the white T-shirt, but was never able to really verify that.
So our property is 230 acres, and the original Santa's Village was built on 15 of those acres. So the rest of the acreage was kind of left to be natural, and they did harvest the wood. The original family that owned it was a developer in the area, and they had leased the land to Glenn Holland and the Santa's Village Corporation. And then he subsequently became the contractor for every Santa's Village. So it had a lot of continuity to it because they had the same contractor. I think they even moved the same crews to each group when they did the Santa Cruz and also the Dundee. So they had their techniques down. This is like a typical building that we have. We have been able to restore all the buildings that we have by either swapping logs out, or, you know, we had to re-chink them. There was a lot of things that we had to do to make them functional again, because you'll see later that there's a lot of demolition that happened in the years that it was vacated. But this is a typical building. Here's another one.
Yeah, this is another one. This is the Pixie Pantry. This was another thing that we found not viable with the old park. It was kind of like a snack shop. It did burgers and hot dogs. By the way, it was my first job when I was 13 and a half years old. I actually worked at the original Santa's Village. And one of the things that we learned in going through this and getting consultants to help us with the theme park industry is they simply could not produce enough food. So we have the same building, but we've enclosed the gazebo section of it that you see there on the right and made it more of a full-blown restaurant, and it's now called St. Nick's.
This is actually Putty Hank's wife, Pamela Hank. I think it's really funny because we're very involved as a couple. We worked together on this project, and they did as well. I think at this point, maybe not as much, but later on in their later years, they were able to take over the park again. And, you know, they were just kind of, I always think about them when I think about us working together.
Yeah, husband and wife team. So this is the dollhouse. When we were dumpster diving through the park, and you'll see some dumpster type photos here coming up, we found some of the original accounting books from Santa's Village. We did not get any information on how the old park ran, but what we did find is this particular building was the dollhouse, and it was the worst performing building in the park out of 18 structures that were in the park. And so we've converted that into the Pedal Pub. It is now a bar and is now our top producing building in the park.
This is one of our friends when he was little. He sent us this photo. Everybody who's from the LA area knows that, you know, Santa's Village was like the place they visit, you know, once a year. One of the problems with the business model was that, you know, people don't care about Santa very much all year round. And we've kind of come up with a new business model so that we can have that, but also have a more sustainable business throughout the year. We constantly get photographs from our friends or people on our Facebook and things that send us these photos. And someday we're gonna make something really cool out of them, I think.
So this is this is Putty Hank. This is the gentleman that built all of the parks. He was the original landowner of our Santa's Village, and we just thought it would be kind of an iconic photo just to put up there. This is one of the last pictures, I believe, that was taken of him. He died at 90 years old, and it was just kind of a neat thing. When he did close the park down in 1998, all of the rides were auctioned off, and tons of the mushrooms, and that's why you see the mushrooms in a lot of the front yards of people's houses. The entire park was auctioned off. And then put up for sale.
So during the time after Putty had sold the park, there was a lot of kind of things going on in the mountains. I mean, as you guys know, in Southern California, we're constantly having fires. We had a huge fire in 2003, and it burned a portion of the property. This is right across the front side of our property. We do own the property on the left as well as on the right is where the village area is. And the property on the left was completely burned, and there really aren't any trees left anymore. And that's where we've built our campground. But on the right-hand side, because all of the fire departments and everybody was able to stage there, they were able to keep the fire from entering into the village area.
So one of the reasons for the fire breakout was the onset of a bark beetle that came into our community, and it literally decimated the forest of all of the acreage, literally thousands and thousands of acres around Lake Arrowhead. It was said that there were more cranes in Lake Arrowhead removing trees than any city in the world. And so there was no place to put all these trees that were coming out of the forest. Well, by chance, Santa's Village with its large parking lots had the ability to house all this lumber. And so the land use was changed, and it ended up being a timbering milling operation. And it was the park itself actually got completely abandoned and went through a series of vandalization. And these are just some of the pictures that show, I mean, how much lumber actually just got brought into the site is just tremendous. This is a meadow that we have that was a very, very sensitive ecosystem. And it was demolished by all the lumber and all the waste that was brought into the property.
That's a bark beetle tree that was attacked at one point, and then they just like stand dead for a while, and then they become very dangerous. So it was kind of a really big deal. It was declared an emergency area for our town and everything. And during this time was when there was a transition of the property ownership. So the Hank family had sold it to another family named the Potts family, and the Potts family was leasing this property out to these logging companies. Like, I think they felt like they were doing the community a favor, but it just went on and on for years and years. And the leasing people who leased it, they actually did a lot of damage to the property. But during that time, the owner at that time was able to, do some remodeling to the buildings, and he was able to put roofs on and new windows in them. And that really saved it for us for when we came in. This photo is of the Meadowlands. We have restored our meadow completely to a new, an ecological preserve. This is just what we had to deal with. There was a lot of trash. This is mulch debris, which is not good for ecosystems because of all the tannins and all the things that leach into the water system. That's beyond this. This is one of our iconic, this was the Silver Slip Pond, which was in the middle of the park. And we did end up preserving that. This is a photograph of it. And you can see the red on it was the Phos-Chek that the bombers bombed the property with. And that's how close the fire was and how much they tried to save this property during that 2003 fire.
So here's a picture of the day. I think we closed escrow. I think I took this picture. Here's the entrance building with the giant candy cane in front. And as you notice, the roofs on these buildings were redone by the last owner in an effort to try and get through the development process with the possibility of reopening the park. And between the bark beetle and the actual entitlement process, the park simply couldn't survive through that entitlement process. This picture, I think I took and threw it in there because what we found is when we walked through the park, the place was vandalized so badly that people came in and they took trucks and they tie the wire to the trailer hitch of their truck, and they would rip the wire out of the ground that ran the monorail because it had huge, 0-aught wire. What we found though, when we purchased the property, was once they pulled the wire out of the ground with the truck, the wire was physically so heavy they couldn't lift the wire to steal it. So there was wire that was laying out from the thieves that came through from the night before. So we quickly came in with 24-hour security and put an end to vandalizing the park.
This is a picture of the North Pole, and the Potts family had actually put that in, and that's the one that's existing today. We were able to get it up and running again, but you can also see the mushrooms in this photo. Those ones are some of the originals. When my brother and I went to restore them, we found that the way they were originally built was basically on like log kind of bases with like some supports inside. So we went back in and we rebarred them and we kind of restored them and made them safe for people to, the kids are climbing on them all the time. So we made them really safe. And then we were also able to create them and you'll see them in our video later.
Yeah, and this is just the picture of the backside of the entrance building. Just kind of shows how it was so dilapidated.
That tree on the left actually fell on the building when I was in it one time. This is our bakery. This is what it looked like when we first got
When
it.
we first bought it. There's another back picture of it on the backside. And then the background, you see the beehive again, very theming. Everything was very themed for this storybook look. And so that was the Bumblebee ride. It's a monorail. And just real quickly, when Putty did auction everything off, he auctioned all of the rides off, and a gentleman from Texas bought the monorail. But when the engineers came out to move the monorail to Texas, they realized that it was specific to the topography and it couldn't go on flat ground. So lucky for us, we were able to retain the monorail and it never got moved out of the park. And there it is, a good picture. You can see the bumblebees hanging from the monorail up there in the background. Yeah.
We just wanted you guys to see the condition of it when we originally started the project. And Bill and I both have backgrounds in construction and cabin restoration, land development, all kinds of different jobs. So we thought we could definitely take on this project. It's been a ride for sure. This is the inside of our pedal pub.
At the time, this was the dollhouse that had that old 1955 photo that you saw.
And this was when we were restoring it. So you can see that some of the chinking is new and everything is kind of getting in order. There's
Yeah, we
it cleaned up a little bit more.
put a new open window in it so that now that's a bar counter in the pedal pub. So this is the grading. This was a big challenge for us because yes, it was a historical site, but we were not given any credit through the entitlement process with the codes. Nothing was grandfathered. So because each building was at a different elevation, you couldn't walk from one building to the other building and meet ADA compliance. So we had to absolutely regrade the entire park and come up with a path system and try and get this thing cleaned up. And this is all the foundations from the old rides that were left. I mean, the cleanup that went underway to get this park brought just to what it is today. I look back, I don't even know how we did it. It's kind of incredible.
I'll go. So we have a background in building with milled wood, which was kind of a really great bonus for this place because when we were able to restore some of the buildings, we actually hand milled all the wood. We brought in a mill. Bill and one of our guys did a Sawyer school. And these are some of the, these are like siding and different things that we've used for trim and things like that, that we are drying while we're doing some of the remodel.
And again, this just shows the grading, how we're starting to make grade to get ADA access. And there was another thing I was very particular about. I didn't want any right angles. So as you go through our park, everything is curved. We tried to keep a very whimsical feel to the entire park.
So this was kind of an interim idea. Originally, I wanted to restore the Good Witches Bakery to its original color scheme. And when we got to painting it, I really couldn't stand it. And I thought, gosh, let's do something a little bit more classy. So we kind of stepped back a little bit and decided to do more of a gingerbread house theme. So the bakery is actually now themed the Gingerbread House Bakery. My brother and I were able to recreate like the gingerbread trimmings and all the things that go on it. My brother is actually really talented at doing stucco and gunite, and that's how most of these buildings were built. There was a huge crunch in the building that I think maybe a tractor hit at one time or something. And so he was able to completely patch that corner right there, as well as the Alice in Wonderland, which you guys will see in the video. We were able to re-gunite some of that and restore it so we could keep the facade of the old building.
And we actually changed, you notice the new wall that we're framing right there. We actually changed that into the front of it being a cupcake. So we actually added a few things here and there and tried to maximize the architecture that was given to us. This is just now we get into the ecological side of it. It was time to clean the park up. We had to do a soil separation where we literally had to scrape an entire 5-acre meadow back down to natural earth and then separate all the different types of soils in order to get rid of all the tannic acids and everything from all the lumber milling. We then did a growing program, and we still do that. In fact, we're doing it this week where we get indigenous plants. And so we're doing a huge rehabilitation to our forest and to all our natural landscaping. We try and have the entire park a xeriscape. There is no irrigation in our entire park, and we're trying to make this park sustainable and basically off the grid.
This is a group that came in of students, and they helped us with some of our meadow restoration. We have a lot of community programs that we try to partnership with on field trips, things like that. Obviously, we haven't done that this year, but we really try to maximize the land and education and all the things that we've done as land managers to restore the land, not just the buildings. And this is one of our this is our water system within that meadow. This is kind of like halfway through the restoration process.
So you can see the meadow there is being cleaned. We've got it all cleaned up, and we have a water treatment system that's run by solar that actually circulates the water system through the meadow system.
This is the gingerbread. Sorry, I don't know. Our slides got mixed up a little bit, but this is actually the finished product of the Gingerbread House Bakery. This is its new color scheme, and it seems to go well with the rest of the park. And there's Santa's house. I've been very careful to kind of have a color scheme that's very muted, and because the roofs are different colors, that all of these roofs are still different colors. They're just not the same type of roof that was existing before. It's more of a jewel toned color scheme. I like it a lot. I think it's not as fanciful as the original park, but our park is just a little bit different. As you can see, the mushrooms around the edges too, like some of them had to be kept on the ground because their stems completely broke. This is one of the buildings in the back. This is our entrance, our admissions building, and our offices.
Michelle went and had the lampposts all made. So all of our lampposts are candy canes as you go up what we call now Candy Cane Lane. That's our main street for the park. And we do a lot of outreach stuff. So we also, in order to make the park sustainable, we're also a mountain bike park. We're an outdoor adventure park. Hence, that's why we're able to kind of operate right now, is we're expanding on the outdoor adventure to get us through this COVID crisis. But this is the local high school, and we support the local high school and endorse the mountain bike team and help there. So there's a lot of outreach that we do within the community.
This is, so one of our ideas, we had an opportunity to get this 777 dump truck, and we just kind of jumped at it. It's actually a project that's in development right now. Like, we're always doing something new at the park and building something new or a new attraction, which is sort of what you have to do. But this was a abandoned dump truck that we were able to get, and we had to close Highway 18 in order to bring it up the mountain. And this is them actually bringing it on the trucks. It costs more money to bring it to transport it than it did to buy it. But someday it's going to be really awesome.
It's a playground for kids.
Yeah.
So it's being converted to a playground. So, and there's one of the things that also to make this sustainable was we had to figure out a way in order to reinvent some ownership. And so we really went out of our way. Michelle did a fantastic job. All of our Santas and all of our costuming is made specific to our park. So our Santa isn't necessarily a big jolly guy in a big white suit. He's a little bit more real, I think, for the children. And he has a 4th of July outfit. And so we kind of get through the season with him. And this is Mr. and Mrs. Claus, just some original marketing that we started.
So we kind of we have talked with the group about, how as a historical site, a cultural resource, how can you change that into something that actually makes money, which it takes a lot.
Yeah.
So I kind of put together just a few things. I'm going to show you guys a video in a minute, but our business model, it has to all work together in order for us to pay for this large property and to maintain it. We do employ over 250 people. So we do have Sky Park at Santa's Village, which has 3 restaurants, a coffee house, a bakery, our pedal pub. We have retail stores. We have a bike shop. We also have like a gift shop and an exit shop. We have an ice skating rink that turns into a roller rink during the summer. We have a climbing tower, zip lining. We have archery. We just put in a BB gun range and an axe throwing range this year. We have everything's based on outdoor activity for children and the families. But we also do have some bike kind of thematic things, like we have a pump track and a balanced bike trail. Everything is human powered at our park except for our train. And it's kind of our philosophy that, that's why we want people to get outside. We want people to get active and get off their screens. So that's kind of what our business model is. And we have the property to be able to have all these outdoor activities. We have ponds for fly fishing. We have hiking trails. Like we said before, we do field trips. We have an RV resort. We have a full wedding program, and we also do things like concerts and seasonal overlays onto our park. So we wanted to show you guys a video of just kind of what Sky Park is today, and then maybe we'll do like some questions at the end with everybody.
Yeah, so here we go for the,
Oh, no.
down. Sky Park is built in a generational forest where there is layers of canopy. So we've outlined for you.
Oh, Bill and Michelle, if you don't mind, could you stop sharing and then reshare with the optimize for video and share computer sound
Can you say that
options?
again?
Yeah, can you stop sharing and then reshare with the optimize for video and
Oh,
share
gotcha.
computer sound
Sorry.
options?
Stop it.
Gotcha.
While you're doing that, I just want to comment. I cannot believe the amount of work you did there. That is an incredible story.
I know it's a lot to say, so we're sorry. We tried to make it hurry as much as we could. But,
Yeah.
And 250
Yeah, a lot of
employees,
people are
that's a
commenting
huge
that they're very
endeavor.
impressed with Yeah, there are a lot of comments in the box about how great it is that you've been doing this and that you're restoring this park. So we'll cover some of these questions too in a minute. I think it'd
I
be
think
nice
we're
for
having a
people
little
to see the
trouble.
video.
So what do we need to do, you guys?
So yeah,
Oh,
I'll
so-
stop share. There you go.
Here we go.
Okay.
And then when you
Yeah,
share
reshare
again, you have
one.
to click your two boxes.
Sorry
And
about
then do from current slide and then click the, from current slide, right? And then just click the start button.
There we go.
Okay,
Sorry about
guys.
that.
We're not
This
tech
will-
savvy.
We
We're
wanted to play this-
professionals. We got you.
Yeah, this will kind of show you everything in the park.
Okay.
Oh, that was kind of weird.
No, click that.
There we go.
Sorry.
Sorry.
guys.
There's still no sound, right, John?
Yeah, I'm not hearing any sound.
Well, at least we get to watch the video here. Bill, why don't you just describe to us what you're watching? If you can unmute yourself, since we can't hear the sound on the video, you can just describe it.
Can you guys hear it
Can you
now?
hear it?
No, we can't hear, but if you want to just talk us through it, you can do that.
Yeah,
Sure. So these are just some of our offerings. This is our St. Nick's Patio and Grill right here. This is our main restaurant. We have another restaurant that's barbecue. We have this is where we have our bike shop, and this is where you can rent a bike. You can get fly fishing equipment. We do fly fishing lessons as well.
You had mentioned that when you, I'll just ask you some questions while this is running. You had mentioned that you didn't originally go in with the intention of restoring the Santa's Village. Is that right?
Yeah, originally we really wanted to build a mountain bike park, and that was like our focus. But then we realized that, you know, there was this nostalgia and there was a lot of, there was something there that, you know, that we kind of missed when we originally thought about what we wanted to do with the property. But, you know, it is something that is very, very valid in our business model. I mean, right now our Christmas is kind of very important. It's an important part of the park. It's one of our overlays that we do. And it gets people there that had, you know, took their kids there or their grandparents, or it's very generational. And I think that, you know, it's important that we provide that for families, you know, and I think we have, you know, I'm not really sure what kind of technical difficulties we're having here, but I wish you guys could see I wish you guys could see the video, because it just kind of shows you, because we didn't put a lot of videos in. I mean, we didn't put a lot of slides in with the restoration, like the new photos, because we thought this video was so great or whatever, but I don't know what kind of trouble.
Is it
we're
available
having.
online? Because we can post
Yeah,
the
it's on
link.
our YouTube channel. There's a lot of great videos on our YouTube channel that kind of, you know, there's anything from mountain biking to like some of our little ads and things that we've done, but it shows the park in its glory, I would say.
Yeah, and I think what it really shows is it shows the complexity of what it takes to run a theme park today. Like the Santa's Village model, you know, we do really great in November and December for Santa's Village, but you know, when January and February come, nobody cares about Santa, and so there really has to be something that can take this type of historical idea though and make it relevant today, and make it so that people understand what you're trying to get across and get people out there. And it's so complex because it's not just about theming, and it's not just about providing a product for a market, but it's very much like a Disney model where you have to provide a product to every age group. You have to provide a product for the entire family, because it takes that type of wealth in order to visit the park and get the cash flows to the park in order for it to be sustainable. Otherwise, some of these, you know, I see these historic buildings and I see a lot of historic stuff getting preserved, but it does have to be relevant for in today's world in order for these buildings to stay sustainable and for these parks to move forward.
That's great. I mean, do we want to
maybe
move into questions, John? That brings us right back into the whole topic, right?
Exactly, and we've had a lot of questions, and I want us to cover as many as we can. So we will run a little bit past time today, but I feel it's important to address some of these questions from people. There were some questions about the monorail, Bill and Michelle. You know, I think you mentioned that you have plans to reactivate it, get it running again. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and let us know
Sure,
what the plans are?
I'll cover this one because the monorail is kind of my baby. So the track, I stood under the track during an earthquake that we had a couple of years ago, and the track does not even squeak. It was actually built by the American Crane Company, and it has the weight capacity to hold something like 50,000 pounds of weight. I mean, it's incredible, the strength of the monorail. So when the power was stolen from the park and the wiring was stolen, I couldn't figure out why couldn't we make a pedaled power monorail, make something that's self-powered. So right now under design, in fact, I work on it every day, we are coming up with a bicycle that hangs from the track, and it is the conversion of a mountain bike, and it's a timed system. It's a 1/4 mile track, and the participant, the guest, takes off, and they're timed on a track to race around the track. And it's all, our park is very sophisticated. We have an RFID system on your wristband. So it records your name, how fast you were. And if you did it last month and you come back and you scan in to do it again, it'll record your last time. So it's something that's interactive for the kids. They can compete against each other on it. But it also is extremely scary. That track is 40 feet off the ground. So it's not going to feel very safe. But that's the future plan.
But it's gonna be safe.
But it's gonna be safe, but we're looking forward to getting that going, and that is to be released this summer. So we're right in the production phase right now, and OSHA is helping us getting all the engineering and all the specs through so that we can get that approved.
That's great. I went there as a kid and I probably was not safe. So
Yeah,
but
it
here I
will be a
am
lot
today.
safer now than it used to be.
Yeah, it was super fun. John, you got some more questions? There's a lot on here, a lot in the chat.
Yeah, so, and I don't know if anybody in the panel will be able to answer this question, maybe not, but if not, maybe somebody in the chat box can chime in and if they know any of the history. But somebody was asking if anyone knows who the architect of all of these structures was, if there was an architect. Typically with programmatic architecture like this, it's very informal. Sometimes, you know, just nobody knows these people, but maybe Adrian can weigh in on, you know, the provenance of a lot of these buildings. How do you find who built them or who designed them?
Usually we'll look at original building permits if we can access them. But say in the case of Alpine Village, it was built by 4 different architects between 1968 and 1974. And other buildings like standalone buildings, or even say the Crossroads of the World that we looked at earlier, that was built by the same streamlined modern architect that built the Coca-Cola bottling plant, Robert Duras. So sometimes there'll be an architect of record like that. Or the Tale of the Pup was built by architect Milton Black, who built the Mauritania for the Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz for Jack Haley. So you have to do your research, and you can usually come up with an architect or two, or at least a builder. But as the records get old and are not scanned, it gets more difficult. I'm so impressed by what everything that you're doing, Bill and Michelle. You've moved heaven and earth to make that park happen and bring it to another level that I had no idea.
That's why we have to have cocktails. We have been able to, we have found some documentation that when we rummaged through everything, we found some architectural drawings that I felt so excited to find, but there has been a lot of different architects. We just haven't been able to put the pieces together. I think because some of that stuff was so old, like I don't even know if they're not even like real blueprints what we have. They're just something else. So to find somebody that could like interpret it a little bit for us, that would be cool. But I would love to frame them and use them as decor or whatever.
Sure.
So I have to ask about the North Pole, both for Scotts Valley and for Sky Park. So I know that you've brought the North Pole back to life. I would like to, there were some questions about whether or not it inspired famous scenes in movies. I can't remember. The Christmas Story, is that what it was?
Oh,
Which movie was it, Chris? Yeah, Christmas Story. Yeah.
Christmas Story.
Inspire I can also think of a movie of the early 2000s, Dumb and Dumber, but that's a whole different movie. But
I laugh every day when I go walk by the Santa's house and the kids are like, their parents are yelling at them, like, don't put your mouth on it. And then they put their mouth on it. And like, it's so funny. I love it. And we do have to kind of cover it up in the summer. Like we have this little thing that covers it up because it will melt a little bit, but we pretty much have it going all year.
And what we did is we got a fantastic refrigeration guy. And basically how it works is it works exactly like if you were to take a Coca-Cola can out of your refrigerator and put it out on a summer day, and how it sweats. That sweat is actually the atmosphere collecting on the outside of the Coke can, and that's how this works. So the steel pole has a refrigerant in it, and we get that pole down to 5 degrees using a compressor, and it causes the atmosphere to sweat on the outside of the pole. So we don't really actually add any water or anything to it. It's actually just a cold steel pole. And then you can see how it changes depending on the humidity of the day.
Wow.
It's interesting.
I see we got a note here in the chat that said it's the Christmas Story was based on author Gene Shepard's childhood, so that likely happened in the Midwest. I just thought all the kids did that in the snow, but I'm from Los Angeles, so I don't know. We didn't do that when I was a kid. I had a question, actually, one more about this restoration because it was just so incredible. Plus that big machine you bought, please, that's like every childhood dream. It said it must have cost a fortune. Beth said that must have cost a fortune. Did you do all of that work with private funding, or was there anything available, like any kind of other funding that would help with that kind of work?
No, that that was something that was completely miscalculated by us. We thought that we were such do-it-yourselfers. We really thought that we could get in there and do this thing on a very easy budget. And it's just ourselves and another family. And we just went in on this thing 50-50 and said, hey, let's go after it. Well, luckily, we have a fantastic relationship, because I think if we ever had any other partnership or any relationship with a bank, we would have been cut off a long time ago. So we've had to feed this machine for 5 years financially. And that's why we opened it as quickly as we could. We were allowed a temporary use permit by the County of San Bernardino so that we could kind of get some cash flows going. And we literally have just been wrapping every dime that park makes right back into the park. So I can tell you one thing, it's definitely not on budget. It definitely went over budget.
Cocktails. That's why we have cocktails.
We all sab
let's
ourselves
move over
with cocktails.
Oh, right. I
You
know,
know,
John,
you
in
know
your
what
interview,
I'm saying.
I was going to say,
oh, yeah, I was gonna say,
circling back to the mushrooms, not that that was a question, but somebody said it was fiberglass. It was actually concrete.
Yeah, they're all concrete.
Yeah, they are.
My
I mean, I
nephew
think they.
hauled
I think
a 600-pound one up to our resort, and it was
yeah,
like,
I know
oh my
people
God.
call me and they say, hey, I got this mushroom. Do you want it? And I'm like, no, I don't want it, because I have to have like a crane to come and get it. And I can make my own now. So I don't want it.
But
But
they
yeah,
were
we've been
okay,
there
I have a
Yeah.
question. I'm going to move over to you since you opened the opportunity by speaking up there. So there was a question for you about how often at Sorensen's, how often people realize that they were in a former Santa's Village structure once they saw it.
I would say most of the people recognized that from their youth. Yeah. I mean, it was not that we attracted a lot of guests because of that, but once they realized they were there, oh my God, they said, oh my God, I've been there. I've been in that cabin. So no, it was a real treat for everybody, including ourselves.
Now, another theme that sort of comes up in both of these cases, I think, is the sustainability tied to preservation, and how I'm wondering with Bill and Michelle, when you approached this park and you saw everything that was there, your intent to save it, was it a sustainable, like an ecological intent, or was it historical? What were your reasons and motivations to make sure that a lot of these buildings remained as they were?
I think that we're from the local community and we understand like how special it is. I think it was historic, but that wasn't our motivation. I mean, we are, you know, we wanted a business. I mean, we didn't say like that was, I wouldn't, to be honest, it wouldn't be like the number one thing, but it is definitely a big part of what that place is. I think it's super important that, I mean, we've been able to convert the buildings into things that make money, which is great. Like I'm super crazy about people putting nails in them. And like, I'm really into preserving what the integrity of those buildings are. And a lot of them are used for the same things that they were used for before, you know, I mean, the chapel, for instance, you know, we do weddings in there. We have a pavilion that used to be the carousel, and we do all of our shows in there. You know, we have a candy shop, we have a coffee, you know, it's just, I think we have a lot more things that used to be there than people realize because of keeping the integrity of the buildings. You know, we do have space issues because we don't have a lot of storage because, you know, these buildings weren't built for that. So we will like just kind of put things everywhere we can, you know, but we did have, you know, a tie to the community and the importance of creating jobs. We had the historical factor, I think, but, you know, we did want to create a business based on this outdoor activity that we really have a passion for. You know, we really love mountain biking, and that was our initial motivation. And the property, we used to trespass there a lot and go snowshoeing and mountain biking there, and we'd get caught by Putty Hank actually, and he'd kick us out or say, okay, keep going or whatever. But we love the property. It's so magical there, and it's not like any other forest in Southern California. So that was really what we loved about it. And we really are land stewards. We're not, I wouldn't call us like one way, like all the way over here, but we are very much about preserving the land as well.
And I think one of the things, John, to answer your question too, is one of the things that's unique about the property was the fact that the buildings were built from the forest. And so for us to resurrect and repair these, we literally would jack up a building, rip a log out and run out into the forest and go get a matching cedar tree with the exact same dimension lumber. And it looked like it was the original log. There was no difference in the original log because it's all coming from the same exact forest, the same material. So we had some advantages, I think, over other historical preservation projects because we have the natural resource to put it back together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that leads me to the next question. I was going to ask you, Nicholas, we got a question about, since you've seen maybe more of the variety of amusement parks, have you ever seen this level of restoration at one of these kind of roadside parks nationwide?
Yes, that's a great question. I saw that come in and it gave me some time to think about it a little bit. It's really unique to look at Sky Park at Santa's Village because in most cases when parks have closed in the past, often it's been a housing development that's gone, it's condominiums, or it's been a mall. It's a developer who bought the property with the intent to basically immediately eradicate what was there. And in most cases, that's what's happened to most of the parks that have closed and that I've done research on. There are some parks that have closed and have sat abandoned, kind of like Sky Park did for decades, but the state of repair that they were in eventually led to they just had to raise it. It was unsavable. So there have been parks and places that have been tried to be revived. But I can't tell you how excited I was as a theme park preservationist and fan of history of parks when Sky Park Santa's Village reopened, because it was like one of my dreams came true to have a lost park come back to life and to hear the full story from Bill and Michelle here, which I hadn't seen how much care they put into the place. Like, I don't know how I still haven't gone there, which is like bad on me that I haven't done that yet. But it's a really, really great example of, the right people at the right time and with the right intentions.
The naive people, naivety, that's us. We were naive. We were so naive. And we say that a lot, but it is true. I think that we have, if we would have known how much work it was, we wouldn't have probably done it. Like if you ask me now, but I'm proud of it. And I think it's a good thing.
And I think that to add, Nick, to what you were saying, one of the problems that we ran into with the old park and the other parks that are dilapidated is that you lose that heritage of it and you lose control of the land use. And that's what happened to us. When we bought the property, I was of the assumption that property was zoned as an amusement park, but that's not what happened. The San Bernardino County saw that was no longer a valid use because it had gone broken. So they changed the land use to residential. So it cost us $1 million. We had to do an environmental impact report and go through CEQA in the state of California. It took us over a year and $1 million just to get the zoning changed back to a theme park. So there's other obstacles that people don't realize, that we didn't realize, that were going to hit us because the municipality, the local jurisdiction, wanted it to be houses.
That's a story for another webinar, don't you think, John?
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Yeah.
That's a wonderful story. One thing that may have saved you some time, which my understanding is if you follow the Secretary Standards of Rehab, you can bypass CEQA, at least the historic side of it. I think so.
Secret.
If it was a designated property, which I don't think Santa's Village is designated historically, but if it was, you follow the Secretary Standards of Rehab, you can go through all that and get streamlined through it. So just something to mention to people, I guess, and all the financial incentives for a lot of these projects, the historic tax credits and things like that. So with that being said,
yeah, we better wrap it up because we went over it a little bit. I just wanted to let you know, I think this is for Bill and Michelle, that Redlands Area Historical Society wonders if you need any pictures, historic pictures, you can contact them. And I've been posting in the chat places where people can find all of your information. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today and sharing all of your expertise. They're incredible stories. And I think we definitely need to do another part 2 on this one too. Don't you think, John?
Absolutely. I'm pasting into the chat box a link to our evaluation for today. So please let us know what you thought about today's program. I wanted to thank our speakers today, along with Chris. Both of us really appreciate your time and the effort that you put into saving these places and telling their stories. So thank you all for your time today, and have a wonderful holiday season.
Yes, have a happy holiday. And join us. We have another webinar coming up next week about cabins, and that will be the end of our December programming. So yes, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having us, you guys.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Okay, bye.
Good night.
I don't know.